What if the person you despised the most held the keys to everything you ever wanted? What if your greatest blessing came disguised in rags, and you, in your pride, spat in its face? In life, destiny often tests us before it rewards us. The beggar at your gate may carry your inheritance in her hands. Reject your mother in her rags, and you reject your own future. But the son who washes his mother's feet with tears will have those tears turned to gold. This is the story of Kamsiochukwu, the village prince who had everything and lost it all because of one cruel moment. In Umuweka village, there was a saying that when God was sharing beauty, Kamsi collected his portion and came back for more. He was the kind of man who made the air change when he walked into a room. Tall, with skin like polished bronze, features so perfect that women stopped mid-sentence to stare. Men stepped aside when he passed. Children pointed and whispered. He moved through the village market like royalty, dressed in expensive agbada, his gold wristwatch catching the afternoon sun. They called him the village prince, not because of his bloodline, for nobody truly knew where he came from, but because of his face, his success, his untouchable aura. He owned the biggest provision store in the village. He drove a black SUV on dusty roads where others walked barefoot. He had built his adoptive parents a small house on the outskirts of the village, but he rarely visited. He sent money, not love, gifts, not presents. But beneath that beautiful face lived a heart as cold as Harmattan wind. A poor widow approached his store one afternoon, her wrapper faded from years of washing, her eyes heavy with the weight of raising children alone. She begged for credit, just enough rice to feed her family until the harvest. Kamsi looked at her the way one looks at an insect and waved his hand in dismissal. "If you cannot pay, do not waste my time," he said. Poverty is a choice. When his adoptive mother, Mama Ebere, came to visit wearing her simple village clothes, Kamsi rushed her away before his business associates could see her. He was embarrassed by the woman who had raised him, fed him, loved him when he had nothing and no one. In his mind, he was destined for more than these common people. He was meant for greatness. What Kamsi did not know was that his belief was half right. He was indeed destined for something extraordinary. But destiny had a test waiting for him, a test that would shatter everything he thought he knew about himself. Before we dive deeper, let me share something with you. This story is about a test of the heart. And in a small way, every viewer faces a test too. Will you scroll past, or will you pause to support something that took days of love and effort to create? Writing this script, recording every word, editing every scene, it all comes from the heart. Your like, your subscription, your comment telling me where you're watching from. These small acts cost you nothing but mean everything to me. I read every single comment, and I'll be shouting some of you out in the next video. All right, enough of that. Let's return to Kamsi, because his test is about to begin. The mystery of Kamsi's origin was the village's favorite whisper. 28 years ago, Mama Ebere and her husband, a poor woodcutter, found a baby abandoned at the crossroads near the village shrine. The child was wrapped in expensive cloth, blue with gold, threading in a pattern no one in the village had ever seen. Around his tiny neck hung a gold chain with a pendant shaped like an eagle. This was no ordinary abandoned child. This was someone's treasure, lost or stolen. They raised him as their own, loved him fiercely, and kept the cloth and chain hidden as reminders of the son they believed God had sent them. Kamsi grew up knowing he was adopted, and this knowledge planted a seed of pride in his heart. He was not like these villagers. He was special, different, better. His fiancée, Adeze, came from a wealthy family in the city. Their engagement was the talk of Umuweke. Kamsi saw her as his ticket to the life he deserved, far from the dust and poverty of his origins. Then one morning, everything changed. a ragged woman appeared at the edge of the village. She was thin as dried bamboo, her clothes torn and stained, her hair matted with dust from countless roads. She looked like she had walked 1,000 miles, and perhaps she had. She moved through the market, asking anyone who would listen if they had seen a child, a boy who was lost many years ago, who would be a man now. Most people ignored her. Some threw scraps of food at her feet. Children mocked her, calling her mad woman. But she kept searching, her eyes scanning every face with desperate hope. Then she saw him. Kemsi was standing outside his store, laughing with his business associates, his white agbada gleaming in the morning light. The beggar woman froze. Her body began to tremble. Tears spilled down her dusty cheeks. She whispered words that would echo through eternity. "My son, I have found you." She approached slowly, reverently, as if approaching something sacred. Kamsi turned and saw her, and his face twisted in confusion, then disgust. "Who are you? What do you want?" The woman's voice shook with emotion. "I am your mother. I am Ifeoma. You were taken from me when you were only 3 days old. I have never stopped searching for you." She described the cloth he was wrapped in, every detail of its pattern. She described the gold chain, the eagle pendant, the way it was clasped, details no stranger could know. Mama Ebery arrived, drawn by the commotion. She listened to the beggar woman's story, and her face went pale. With trembling hands, she went home and returned with the cloth and chain she had kept hidden for 28 years. "These are the things we found with you," she said to Kamsi. "Everything this woman says is true." The village gathered, everyone watched, and Kemsi felt his perfect world cracking around him. Imagine discovering your mother after nearly 30 years, only to find her in rags. What would you do? Drop a comment below and tell me, then hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. What happened next became the darkest legend Umuweka village would ever tell. Kamsi looked at the beggar woman. He looked at the growing crowd. He saw Adis watching from the edge of the gathering, her face unreadable. He saw his business partners whispering behind their hands. He felt his reputation, his image, his carefully constructed life, all of it threatened by this filthy creature claiming to be his mother. His shame transformed into rage. "You," he shouted, his voice cutting through the morning air. "You are my mother? Look at you." He circled her like a predator stalking wounded prey. "You are filth. You are nothing. You smell like the gutter. You look like madness itself." The beggar woman did not argue. She only stood there, tears streaming down her face, silent as stone. "I would rather have no mother than have you as my mother," Kamsi screamed. He gathered the saliva in his mouth and spat at her feet. "I would rather be the son of a dog than the son of a beggar like you. Get away from me before you destroy everything I have built." He shoved her. She stumbled but did not fall. "You are mad. You are a liar. I don't know you. I will never know you." The crowd gasped. Even those who did not like Kemsi were horrified. In their culture, to reject your mother, to spit at her feet in public, was an abomination that invited the wrath of the ancestors. But Mama Ifeoma, the beggar, did something no one expected. She did not curse him. She did not scream. She did not beg. She stood slowly, wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and looked at her son with eyes that held no anger, only a sadness deeper than the ocean. "My son," she said quietly, "I only wanted to see your heart. Now I have seen it." Then she turned and walked away. Her bare feet left prints in the dust. She did not look back. What would you do if you witnessed such a moment? Would you speak up, or would you stay silent? If you believe that no matter how far you rise, you should never forget where you came from, tap that like button right now. And keep watching, because what happens next will shake you. That night, Kamsi could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his mother's face, not angry, not accusing, just sad, sad in a way that made his soul uncomfortable. He woke before dawn, drenched in sweat. Something felt wrong. His skin felt strange, tight in some places, loose in others. His head throbbed. He stumbled to the mirror in the corner of his room, and he screamed. The face staring back at him was not his own. His beautiful features were gone, replaced by something twisted and wrong. His skin was rough and scarred as if burned. His eyes, once bright and clear, were dull and clouded. His perfect symmetry had become grotesque asymmetry. He looked like a monster. Kamsi slapped himself, pinched his skin, splashed water on his face. He was convinced it was a nightmare. But the mirror did not lie. The curse was real. By morning, the news had spread through Umueke like wildfire. The village prince had been cursed. People came to see for themselves, and they ran away screaming. His workers abandoned his store. His business partners dissolved their agreements, saying they could not be associated with a cursed man. A daze came on the second day. She took one look at his ruined face, and her hand flew to her mouth. She could not even pretend to hide her horror. "I cannot marry this," she whispered. "My family will never accept whatever you have become." She removed her engagement ring and let it fall to the floor like something contaminated. By the end of the week, children were throwing stones at his windows, chanting, "Monster, monster. The village prince is now a village rat." The same people who had envied him, admired him, wanted to be near him, now could not run away fast enough. Kamsi lost everything. His store stood empty. His fine clothes hung on his shrinking frame. His SUV gathered dust. He became the very thing he had always despised, a rejected outcast, a beggar of dignity in a village that no longer wanted him. And deep in his broken heart, he knew why. They say pride comes before a fall, but Kamsi's fall was only the beginning. If this story is touching your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Now let's see if redemption is even possible. Months passed. Kamsi withered into a shadow of his former self, living alone in his house like a ghost, afraid to show his face in daylight. But something began to stir in his soul. His mother's last words echoed in his mind every waking moment. "I only wanted to see your heart. Now I have seen it." He understood now. This curse was connected to her. But more than that, he understood that he had been wrong, deeply, terribly wrong. Not because he had been punished, but because he had hurt an innocent woman who had spent nearly 3 decades searching for her stolen child. And he had spat in her face for the crime of being poor. He went to Mama Ebere, his adoptive mother, and fell at her feet. "I have to find her," he said. "I have to make this right." Mama Ebere looked at the son she had raised, now humbled and broken. And she saw something she had never seen before, genuine remorse. "My son," she said, "you may search forever, but I will pray that you find what you are looking for. Not just her, but yourself." Kamsi left Umueke with nothing but the clothes on his back. For 3 years, he wandered Nigeria like a ghost. Village to village, town to town, searching for the beggar woman. And everywhere he went, he experienced what he had once inflicted. He begged for food and was spat upon. He asked for water and was met with stones. He sought shelter and found doors slammed in his face. He was called worthless, cursed, monster. The world became his mirror, reflecting back every cruelty he had ever shown. But something strange happened during those years of suffering. The pain began to change him. He met a blind old man, hungrier than himself, and gave away his last piece of bread. He found a young girl being bullied by village boys and stood up for her, ugly and weak as he was. He worked for a poor widow for an entire week, asking nothing in return. He began to help others, not because he wanted his face back, but because he finally understood. Every human being, no matter how they look, no matter how poor, deserves dignity, including beggars, including monsters. He no longer searched for his mother to lift the curse. He searched because he needed her to know that he was sorry, truly sorry. Redemption isn't given. It's earned through suffering and change. If you believe second chances exist, hit that like button. We're almost at the end, and I promise, you're not ready for what's coming. After 3 years of wandering, Kamsi heard a rumor. A woman matching his mother's description had been seen in a village far to the north. He traveled for weeks on foot, through rain and scorching sun, until he finally arrived, and there she was. Sitting outside a small hut, still dressed in rags, looking exactly as she had that day in Umueka. Kamsi approached slowly, his legs trembling. He fell to his knees before her, then lowered himself completely, pressing his forehead into the dust. "Mother," he wept, "I rejected you in my pride. Please accept me in my humility." He crawled forward and took her feet in his hands. He washed them with his tears, wiping them with his tattered shirt. "I called you filth. I was the filth. I called you worthless. I was the worthless one. I said I would rather have no mother. I was wrong. You are the only mother I want." He looked up at her with his ruined face. "I do not ask you to lift this curse. I ask only that you forgive me." Mama Ifeoma was silent for a long moment, looking into her son's eyes. Then slowly, she smiled. "My son," she said, "stand up." She clapped her hands. From behind the hut, attendants appeared dressed in fine clothes. The hut itself was pushed aside, revealing a convoy of expensive cars and well-dressed servants. Her rags fell away. Beneath them, she wore expensive lace. Her matted hair was a wig, removed by an attendant to reveal beautiful, styled hair underneath. Her bent posture straightened into something regal and commanding. She was not a beggar. She was Chief Mrs. Ifeoma Okonkwo, one of the wealthiest women in Nigeria. Owner of hotels, oil interests, and real estate across West Africa. "My son," she said, "you were stolen from me by a jealous rival when you were 3 days old. I spent 28 years searching for you. When I found you, I could not simply hand you an inheritance. I had to know what kind of man you had become. So I came to you in rags to test your heart." She touched his face gently. "You failed the test, so I let you suffer. Not as punishment, but as education. Money can buy many things, but it cannot buy compassion. That must be learned through pain." Tears streamed down Kamsi's face. "I understand now, Mother. I am so sorry. I know you are. I have watched you these 3 years. I have seen you give your last food to the hungry. I have seen you protect the weak. I have seen your heart transform." She kissed his forehead. "Now you are ready." Kamsi touched his face. His skin was smooth again. He looked into a basin of water and saw himself, not just restored, but more handsome than before. Yet there was something different in his eyes now. Depth, wisdom, compassion. 1 year later, Kamsi stood in the Umueka market where he had once rejected his mother. He now managed her charitable foundation, building schools, feeding the hungry, visiting orphanages. He had found the widow he once turned away and given her a house. He had brought Mama Ebre to live with him in honor, not shame. He did not marry a daze. He married a humble woman who had loved him when he looked like a monster. "I was once called the village prince because of my face," he told the gathered village. "But faces fade. Beauty is borrowed. What lasts is how you treat the people who cannot do anything for you." He walked to a beggar in the crowd and embraced him. God sends your blessing disguised as a test. The beggar at your gate may hold the keys to your palace. I rejected my mother in her rags and nearly rejected my own destiny. But grace gave me another chance. And so the village prince became the village father. Not because of what he had, but because of what he gave. Not because of his beauty, but because of his heart. And that, my friends, is why we should never judge a person by their appearance. Because the blessing you reject today might be the destiny you cry for tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, tap that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Now tell me, have you ever judged someone by their appearance, only to discover they were more than you expected? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. Where are you watching from today? Until next time, remember, your character is your true wealth. God bless you.